My countrymen, here in defiance of tyranny. You've come to fight as free men. And free men you are. What will you do without freedom? Will you fight? Fight against that? No! We will run! And we will live. Die. Fight and you may die. Run and you'll live. At least a while. And dying in your beds many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
You ready? Let's go. Yeah. For those of you that want to know what we're all about, it's like this, yo. This is 10% luck.
And welcome to Anti-Tyranny News Radio here on UCY.TV. Thank you for joining me this evening. Oh, a lot of topics to cover. We have one that I will be getting into more probably second hour, but basically Michigan triggering article, they're basically triggering a constitutional convention. I got the article up somewhere here, one of these multiple tabs. We also have here, let me find it here. There's a update on the Justin Pelletier case. Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz to defend her in court. So I'll be getting into that. Some updates on the Fort Hood shooting, which I'm sure all of you are aware of. And quite a few other articles I'll be getting into. I'm going to start us off with a new one from Adam Kokesh. And this is titled Social Conservatism is Theocracy. And in the description it says David Silverman of American Atheists at CPAC 2014, and it says here he was tarred and feathered right after this interview. Sadly, we did not get that on tape. But let's go ahead and I'll play this because I know I got listeners out there that aren't religious and some that are, and that the common factor that we have is our right to live our lives the way we choose and believe the things that we choose to believe. So let's go ahead and get into this.
Silverman. I'm president of American Atheists, which is the oldest national nonprofit organization by and for atheists in this country. We were started by Madalyn Murray O'Hair in 1963, and now we're here today to talk to the conservatives about atheism in conservatism.
But you're not exactly getting the warmest welcome. You asked for a table here at CPAC, and you were denied. This seems like one of the big underground drama stories of 2014 CPAC.
And what I'm getting is a very schizophrenic response. Okay, it's very, very schizophrenic. They allowed us to have a table, and then the news asked us what we're going to do, and we said exactly what we've always said we're going to do. We're here to address the idea that conservatism and Christianity are inextricably linked. We're here to raise the awareness of the fact that atheism and conservatism are not incompatible, that there are millions of atheist conservatives, and we're also highlighting the fact that Christianity, as a part of conservatism, the social conservatism isn't actual conservatism. It's theocracy. Okay, let's just call it what it is. Fiscal conservatism is real conservatism. Social conservatism is theocracy masquerading as conservatism, and that is holding down conservatives. An idea. When when Tom DeLay comes out and says Jesus wrote the Constitution, okay, he makes all the fiscal conservatives look bad. Let's just say it, okay? He makes all the fiscal conservatives look bad. And when they come out and say this stuff, there's tens of millions of non-religious people nationwide who would lean towards the conservative side but are being pushed away by the theocracy and the social side. And we're here to deliver the message that conservatism is holding on to the wrong side. Christians are not going to go away from the conservative movement. But that doesn't mean Christianity has to be pushed by the Republicans.
So do you describe yourself as a conservative?
I do not. And the simple reason is because conservative has so much Christian baggage. If I say I'm a conservative atheist, people are going to assume I'm part of the Christian right.
But you're wearing buttons that say conservative atheist.
Well, yes. And here I can make it clear that, yeah, I'm a pretty conservative guy.
So you mean in this more open conversation, there are different stripes, and it's a more intellectual conversation. It's not just,
if
okay.
We're talking about it, yes, I believe in a small government. I believe in fiscal responsibility. I believe in a strong military. I'm a multiple gun owner. I have very conservative leanings, and I never vote Republican. Because the Republicans never give me somebody who supports separation of religion and government, and that means they don't support anyone who supports my personal equality as a non-religious person. That's why I can never vote Republican. I haven't voted Republican since Bob Dole and Christy Todd Whitman. Well, I didn't even vote for Bob Dole, but I did vote for Christy Todd Whitman. It's been that long since I've actually had a choice at the voting booth. I vote Democrat because I have to vote against the people who are against the separation of church and state. And I shouldn't be doing that. I shouldn't be doing that. The separation of church and state is a synonym for religious equality. We should not be having that as part of the conservative agenda. The conservative agenda should be about small government, strong military, conservatism, not religion.
Well, then what do you tell a conservative who says you can't have a system of morality without religion?
But we do, and we can. There are lots of systems of morality in this world that don't have religious infringement on them. I mean, just look at the 60 million or so non-religious people out there. They don't have religion. They're not breaking that many laws. It's not like the jails are filled with atheists. They're filled with Christians and Muslims and Jews. They're not filled with atheists. So the concept that morality comes from religion is completely flawed. And the concept that this is some sort of a Christian nation is a lie. We can prove it, but a lot of people don't care. And I want to talk a little bit about that because people say, well, this is a Christian nation. And I say to them, so what? I want them to finish that thought. This is a Christian nation is the first part of the sentence. Okay? The second part of the sentence is, we're a Christian nation, so what? Christianity deserves some sort of advantage over other people? That's the exact opposite.
Isn't the point of that first part of the statement to cut off thinking, to cut off debate?
They want to stop the debate they want to stop equality, and they want to defend inequality by saying, oh, we're a Christian nation, so it's okay. Well, it's not okay. The point of America is equality. That's what freedom is. That's what America is, and that's what conservatism should be about. And that's what we're here to talk about. And because we came with that message, CPAC organizers threw us out. They took away our booth. That's one part, okay? And they did it hard. And they I gotta just say it, they lied about why, okay? They said that we were attacking all people of faith, which is a complete crap, okay? It's complete crap. We're not attacking any people at all. I'm not saying Christian people are stupid or bad or anything like that. We're saying that Christianity doesn't belong in the conservative platform and that it's hurting conservatism by being there. And we're not suggesting that it should be an atheistic platform. We're suggesting it should be a religion-neutral conservative platform. And that's what we're pushing. So CPAC organizers threw us out, and they tried to blame it on us. They said we were attacking people of faith. Not true. Not at all true. Never true. And then we came here anyway. So I put on my shirt. I put on my Firebrand shirt. I decked myself out with pins.
Maybe that's the reason that they won't look, because you don't look like a conservative.
Well, I can look like a conservative. I dress up. I clean up well. But I'm not here to clean up well. I'm here to be a walking, talking atheist billboard to talk about what we're doing. And the nice thing is, and this is the most surprising thing, the response that we've gotten, the response that I've personally gotten, is completely different from what I expected. Really completely different. I expected to walk into a wall of hate.
You mean the establishment here doesn't represent the grassroots? You mean Chris Christie and the ACU and the organizers don't represent the grassroots of the movement?
I can't believe it. I can't believe the extent to which that's true.
Yeah.
I can't believe the extent to which that's true. First of all, there's a lot of atheists here. A lot. Okay, you stand out in the middle of CPAC with atheist brochures, and I don't get people just taking it. I get people thanking me for being here, and I get people saying, I'm an atheist too. A lot. I would
Closet atheists at CPAC.
Closeted atheists. Lots of them. Lots of closeted atheists at CPAC. And guess what else? The Christians that I've met, the vast majority of Christians support our presence here. The vast majority of Christians support our voice being part of the overall movement. The vast majority of Christians, hello CPAC, the vast majority of attendees here want American atheists to have a booth and in fact have a presence on stage at CPAC because we have a voice. And we should have a voice. And it's not about that little tiny bubble of we're all religious Christian conservatives and that's what conservatism means. No. Conservatism does not mean Christianity. Conservatism means conservative, and that's a very broad statement. You can be a Jew, you can be a Christian, you can be an atheist and be a hardcore conservative. And by conservatism saying, okay, we're just Christian and this is a Christian nation and Jesus wrote the Constitution, they are forcing away tens of millions of otherwise voters.
Now, here at CPAC, this is my third one. It seems like every year it gets more libertarian as more young people come in. There are, Young Americans for Liberty especially has a huge presence. Lots of other groups. You see Rand Paul now being sort of the mainstream moderate as a very libertarian leaning conservative. Mm-hmm. And in that younger crowd, do you think that trend, I've met some young Christians here who are very passionate, but the trend of younger generations being less attached to organized religion. Do you think that's true here? And do you think there's a connection with that and the younger generation of conservatives being a lot more libertarian?
All of the above. All of the above. By and large, by far, a lot more young people have come out to me as atheists than older people. We've had so many people your age, many people my age, many people older come to me as well.
The older people are just deeper in the closet.
Well, I think that's true. The young people are very open about being an atheist and very proud of it. And yes, that's why they're leaving. That's why they're not voting Republican. That's why they're voting Libertarian. Why can't conservatives see this? They're pushing people away. Here at CPAC, there are a lot of people here who agree with me. A lot of people who agree with the atheist walking around CPAC. This is something that really the conservative movement needs to see. They need to put out polls. I don't know if there's any sort of a feedback form at CPAC, but if you're at CPAC, fill out that feedback form if it's there and say that you want the atheist to have a voice and a presence, because I've had a lot of requests. When are you speaking? When are you going up on stage? They want to hear the atheist voice because this voice, this position that I'm saying is not that much of a minority position. And it is a logical position, and it is, most importantly, the correct position, because conservatism is not unique to Christianity. Everybody is willing to say that, but nobody's willing to give non-Christians a stand.
Outstanding. Thank you very much for your time, sir.
Thank you so much for having me on. And by the way, our national convention is, get this, our National Atheist Convention is in Salt Lake City on Easter weekend. I'll say that one more time. National Atheist Convention, Salt Lake City, Easter weekend. Just chew on that for a little bit. We throw the best parties in the atheist world every year. American Atheist has the best parties, the best conventions. It's a huge convention, not as big as CPAC, but it's fun. And please come. And the website is atheists.org, and my Twitter handle is Mr. Atheist Pants. Mr. Atheist Pants was actually a funny story. Stephen Colbert gave me that Twitter handle when he pointed at my face on his show and actually called me Mr. Atheist Pants. And I said, that's my Twitter handle.
Outstanding. Thank you, sir.
And, I thought it was important to play this because he points out something that I really don't hear too many people pointing out, is that, even the libertarian Republicans, the establishment libertarian Republicans, if that makes any sense, because the Tea Party has been hijacked, they definitely push out, atheists and people that are not, religious when it comes to Christianity, and you've seen it happen. You almost do have to be closet atheist, if you are an atheist, to get anywhere. You have to play that conservative Christian role. And it's sad because when it comes to liberty, what does the religious aspect of it have to do? If you believe in the same morals, if an atheist can believe in the same morals as a Christian, but the Christian believes that, well, those morals come from, God and Jesus, then even though the atheist might share the same morals, because he doesn't understand, let's push him away. And that's how I've viewed it. That doesn't mean that's how it is everywhere. And I do know some tea parties that are very open to atheists or whoever would like to join. I think it's more of the large controlled organizations around the Tea Party that really kind of do that. And CPAC, even though it may not be Tea Party, it leans Tea Party within the Republican Party. And at least the attendees lean that way. But it's one of those things that I don't know. I don't really see the Republican Party ever really truly changing. Therefore, that's why you see most people go libertarian. Definitely when it's the atheists. And even the Christians that believe that, well, the conservative party is just not friendly to everyone. And, you have them talking about, well, we need to attract more Hispanics. And, well, the problem is the people that are there, that are showing up, like the atheists, they don't get the representation. It's not about drawing them to the convention. It's about representing the people that are there at the convention. And when you don't have that collation, it's pretty hard for anybody to vote or trust you. I think that's the main issue. If you want to join in on the discussion, 718-717-8296. Feel free to call in, 718-717-8296. I don't know how many of you out there have attended any of that and maybe have felt like you were not being represented, even though the people there might be accepting of who you are and agree with a lot of your views, that the organization might not have been accepting of you and didn't represent your part of the platform. Because conservatism, it's really it's a way of life, I think, and it doesn't mean that you're necessarily religious. So, you do see a lot of that though. That's why most people just don't even trust the system at all. And a lot of people, that are Christians, the reason they don't vote for the Libertarian Party is a lot of times they don't feel libertarians are Christian friendly. But I think a lot of that really is a misunderstanding. It comes from the point that we don't go promoting Christian. We don't promote anything as Christian values as a libertarian. We believe in, morals and all that, but we don't go, these are Christian values or this is Christian morals. we say these are the morals that we believe in, because that represents everyone, even the Christians, because we could share those same morals. Don't rob, don't steal, don't go killing people. Pretty basic and simple. Do unto others as you would want them to do unto you. Just simple basics of, what you were taught as a kid that no one seems to remember. It's really pretty sad. I have one here from We Are Change. TSA harasses Bitcoiner. Traveler suspected of carrying Bitcoin. And like I said, the main thing I looked at Bitcoin is a good opportunity for, you be able to really, in time of need, be able to get your money out of the country or your wealth out of the country, however you want to put it. That could be a simple way of doing it. Definitely when you're doing it strictly peer-to-peer, not using any, website to hold your money. I don't recommend that. I recommend peer-to-peer if you're going to use Bitcoin. But I'm going to go ahead and pull this up here. Skip this ad real quick.
My name is Davi Barker, and I'm here with Bitcoin Not Bombs.
And can you tell us what Bitcoin Not Bombs is?
We're a publicity organization for charities and social entrepreneurs and people who are seeking to make social change, who want to accept Bitcoin. And when they want to fully capitalize on that decision, we run campaigns for them. We run promotional, activities for them.
That sounds really cool. And can you tell us what happened with the TSA?
Yeah, so this was about a week ago at the Liberty Forum in New Hampshire. I was traveling home from the Manchester airport, and I was wearing one of these hoodies. These are from the Hoodie the Homeless campaign from Bitcoin Not Bombs. And I was... I opt out. I always opt out. And they said that there was a lot of strange metal in my bag and that they had to go through it to make sure that it was safe. And what they were talking about was the lapel pins that I sell. When I go to conferences, I sell these sort of metallic lapel pins from shinybadges.com. And so I'm accustomed to them being confused by this. And so they search my bag and they run it through the x-ray machine again. And what was interesting was when they were emptying out my luggage, they said, "Are there any coins in here?" And I said, "No, but why?" Because it's a strange question. And they said, "Well, we just want to make sure there's nothing valuable in here." And I said, "Well, they're valuable to me because they are. They're merchandise." In hindsight, I shouldn't have said anything, but I did. And I think that was exactly the wrong answer, because as soon as I packed up my things and I began to leave, I was approached by two plainclothes officers in like a shirt and tie, and they wanted to know where I was flying, and they wanted to know how much money I was carrying, and they just all around wanted to detain me and question me. And the reason they gave, because I didn't answer their questions, so they eventually said, "Well, tell us about the Bitcoin." Yeah. And I said, "Well, what are you talking about?" And they said, "Well, we think we saw Bitcoin in your bag." And so I immediately, I know they're full of it. Right? And so I said, "Can I talk to a superior officer? Because I don't think you know what you're talking about." And they said, "We're the superior officers, and if you're not going to cooperate with us, we're happy to call law enforcement, and we'll detain you until you we'll disappear you for a while," because that's what they do.
Is that what they really said?
Not in those words, but they said that they would detain me until I answered their questions. Yeah, they said I had an obligation to answer their questions. And so I said, "What do the Bitcoins look like? What did you see?" And they said they looked like tokens or medallions. And so at this point, I know they're talking about my lapel pins, but I still don't want to tell them anything, because I am holding Bitcoin, I have it on my phone. Yeah. And so I don't want to give them any information that might lead them to look in the right place, because I don't know what crime it is they're fishing for charging me with. And it comes out that the person I'm traveling with, which is Bill Bupert from zerogov.com, he tells them that I'm flying to San Francisco. And so the moment they discover I'm not flying internationally, they say, "Oh, well, we've lost our jurisdiction," and they leave. And so they're enforcing a law which says that you have to declare anytime you carry more than $10,000 across an international border. And so they've decided that law applies to Bitcoin, and that's what they were fishing for.
Trying to get organized,
but I wasn't flying internationally, right? And so that wasn't the issue.
I haven't seen
Now, it's kind of funny when the competent TSA agents think that Bitcoin actually exists in physical form. I know sometimes you can make specific coins, but Bitcoin is a digital currency. It makes no sense. But
it's arguable, even if it was on my phone, that it wasn't on my person, because the Bitcoin itself exists on the blockchain. All that is on my phone are the private keys to control the movement of those Bitcoin.
What does this incident tell you about government intrusion into the Bitcoin world?
So what I've been saying about this incident, and so I recognize that I'm weird, that I dress weird and I talk weird and I carry weird things through TSA checkpoints, and that's okay. So I am a kind of canary in the coal mine on this one, and that's why I'm the first person this has happened to. But what this really means is that when they said in the Bitcoin hearings in DC that they could regulate Bitcoin through existing laws, and they didn't think that they needed a new regulatory regime, that what they're going to do now is they're going to interpret old laws in new ways, and they're not going to tell us how they interpret them, and they're not going to discuss it in the legislature. They're just going to have bureaucrats and law enforcement decide that Bitcoin violates all of these existing laws. And then they're just going to start selectively prosecuting people. So they saw my hoodie, and they said, oh, I saw that symbol in some sort of training seminar in the TSA, lounge, and so I'm going to target him. And that PowerPoint presentation probably had a picture of Casasius coins, and so they thought Bitcoin were tokens, and so they thought that they hit a jackpot by seeing all these lapel pins in my bag. And so from now on, I'm going to be giving them something to search for. I've made this device here, which is a clear, transparent plastic, and it's filled with aluminum rounds that have a Bitcoin B on them but have no value other than the aluminum that they're made of. They're Casasius blanks. They were made by Casasius, but there's no hologram, there's no Bitcoin on them or anything. Yeah. And so next time they search my bag, they're going to find this, and they're going to have to decide how they're going to deal with it.
It should be a very interesting scenario. I definitely strongly recommend having video on there. But what does it say when regulators fail to enforce laws with big banks, and they're openly money laundering to drug traffickers and to mafias and to terrorist organizations, and they get a slap on the wrist? But people like yourself, who are doing charity work, right, are the ones being targeted and harassed for a new digital currency. I mean, this is just insane. Can you tell us also the story behind the hoodie? Because I know there's a whole story of what you guys did with the hoodie.
So let me answer the first question first. The answer is it is completely sane, and it tells you that birds of a feather flock together, that the government being a terrorist organization enjoys other terrorist organizations, that the government being a money laundering organization enjoys other money laundering partners. And so, of course, they don't enforce these laws against their friends and partners. But they will absolutely selectively enforce it against anyone who threatens that relationship, right? And so Cody Wilson said Bitcoin is what they fear it is. And I think that they're starting to realize that that's the case. And so they're going to find ways to selectively prosecute people who are using it and who are outspoken about its power. As far as the hoodies are concerned, Hoodie the Homeless was essentially just a crowdfunding operation to buy 325 discontinued orange hoodies from Mass Appeal Inc. because they said they couldn't sell them retail because they were discontinued, and they just had them laying around, and we're like, hey, orange is our color. And so we agreed to buy them in bulk if we could raise this money, and we distributed them to the homeless in San Francisco. And it was so successful that we intend on doing this every year. So this is going to be Bitcoin Not Bombs winter program from now on. We're going to start fundraising in August, and we're also going to try and branch out into other cities. We're looking for partners in other cities to help us distribute in other places.
I would love to do that in New York City. We should definitely talk after this, but where can people get more involved? Where can people help you guys out?
BitcoinNotBombs.com.
And I know you're prepared with your fake Bitcoins for the next time TSA comes, but Are there any tips and recommendations you have for, up-and-coming Bitcoiners who are using Bitcoin? It seems like the government is just going to use this as they please, use the laws and regulations as they please against anyone who they don't like. Any tips and recommendations for people out there?
Well,
Is this a chilling effect on you?
Not on me. So there's some good science behind this idea, and if you look, we're also doing a campaign called Authoritarian Sociopathy, which is a crowdfunded a renegade psychological experiment on police brutality. And so if you look at the science of the psychology of power and authority, it says that mockery is one of the most powerful weapons against it. And there's some science behind that you should look up. It's called Power and Hypocrisy is the name of the experiment. So when I see things like this, I see an excellent opportunity to mock the TSA. And so new Bitcoiners who are getting into this space and who are living in this sort of climate of fear that the government is trying to create, the best defense is to laugh. That is the best defense against fear, is to laugh. And so I'm recommending that everybody travels through TSA with their Bitcoin shirts on. Everybody sort of like makes fun of, like spreads around the blundering idiocy of these stupid, evil bureaucrats and just make fun of them, make them embarrassed to come out and say Bitcoin out loud because they don't know what it is.
Very well said. Is there anything else you want to say?
No, I'm just glad to be here at the conference. The lunch went well, and I'm excited to be part of the crowd.
Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
What does it matter if companies...
Okay, you have TSA and officers basically targeting exactly what I said, being able to take that Bitcoin and put your assets in that and leave the country and be able to access those assets. It's really hard for them to monitor. And as you could see in that, or hear in that, they didn't even know what they were truly looking for. They probably seen a little slide or something that showed one of the Bitcoins with the hologram in it, and basically it holds that information instead of your phone holding it. It's one of those things they really don't even know exactly what they're looking for, but they're targeting people, even though they're not sure what they're looking for. They really just want to find something and be like, look, we stopped someone from leaving the country with over $10,000 worth of Bitcoin. Hopefully something comes out of it where we see if he goes through airport security again, TSA, with those blanks that are just aluminum blanks with no hologram, no information on them. They're just blanks. And see what happens with that. Another one that Luke Radowski and Stefan Molyneux, and they had a conversation about Bitcoin, internet freedom, and liberation, just really the aspect of it. And some people, they really don't have a trust in Bitcoin. And that's completely understandable. Bubbles can be created with Bitcoin too. But it's really no different than a lot of other currencies. People are like, well, I can hold cash. I can hold the Federal Reserve note. At least I can do that. And when it comes down to it, though, if that bubble makes that dollar bill you have in your pocket worth less than what a penny today is worth, really, what is it worth? You might be able to wipe your butt with it, and that might be something that you might want that dollar for. At least you could wipe your butt with it. Other than that, the value of that Federal Reserve note and a Bitcoin are a lot different. And then too, if you do put, a lot of people do make the choice to have a coin made up with the information for those Bitcoins held within that coin, and that coin might have value to it, and they can make it depending on how much Bitcoin you want to put in it and what blank you want to put it into. You can match the value, And I know there's silver ones, gold ones out there, that the weight in gold and the Bitcoin, if that Bitcoin ever drops, at least that coin will still hold value. I don't know the intrinsic, and all the, inside info on that. I'm not big into Bitcoin. I do believe there's benefits to it and there's downsides to it. I do accept it for donations. Here shortly, I'm going to be accepting it for some other things, but, I do want to play this conversation that Stefan and, Luke had. And when it comes to Bitcoin, that's one of those things you have to make your choice if you even want to deal with it at all. A lot of people don't. There's been a lot of people that didn't want to, and they were talked into it, and they're still hesitant about it to a point, but they do like what it's given the capabilities of them to expand their market. And when it does become something that a lot of people use, it will, in a way, force a lot of companies to have to accept it eventually if it, lasts that long, because, well, if it becomes something that's just mainstream, everyone has Bitcoins, it'll make it hard for certain companies to be able to not accept it if they want to compete with the bigger companies. Now, if you want to stay smaller, maybe a small town, you might not need it. But definitely if you get into something national, global, and Bitcoin becomes popular and mainstream, it will be something that other companies will be accepting, and to broaden your market, you might be forced into it, which doesn't always mean it's a good thing. Again, it's a source, and like I say, don't put all your money into one thing, whether it be Federal Reserve notes, gold, silver, Bitcoin, stock market, nothing. Never put all your money in one place. Be very, very broad where you invest, because eventually everything fails. Nothing's perfect and no one's perfect, and things fail. So having that wide expanse on where you can have investments means that you might be able to access your at least part of your wealth if things go to crap on another end. That's important. But here we go. Maybe. My flash seemed to have crashed, of course. They're definitely making a lot of these things a little bit overly complicated. Tend to have problems, like right now. Let's try this again. Make sure you don't have to deal with the commercial.
This is Luke Radowski of We Are Change.org, and I'm here with Stefan Molyneux, a great philosopher, a great thinker. You also have a really good YouTube channel. You're also on Free Domain Radio. You do a lot of good stuff, and we're here at this Bitcoin conference here in Austin, Texas, and in light of all the bad news, because you see it in the mainstream media, they just hound you with how Bitcoin's dead, how, someone committed suicide, how this exchange is gone. With all this bad news, How do you feel about Bitcoin?
Well, I feel that it's
This is Lugudowski of New York Chancellor. Right now I'm here with Stefan Molyneux, a great philosopher, a great thinker. You also have a really good YouTube channel. You're also on Free Domain Radio. Do a lot of good stuff.
Sorry, give me a second here.
There was a quote that was mentioned yesterday, which is, I don't care what you write about me, just make sure you spell my name right. You know, now millions and millions of people are being exposed to Bitcoin, and the imminent demise of Bitcoin is being predicted, and it's going to be around next week, next year, 5 years from now, and therefore people are going to know that the media was wrong, they're going to be informed about it, and they're going to get to learn about it. And what does it matter if companies go bankrupt? Have we become such a fragile culture that, oh no, a company went bankrupt, that's the end of the world? Companies go bankrupt all the time. You know, lots of people you date, you never get married to. The relationships break up. Is that the rule now? The first person you date, you have to stay with until the end of your life? No. Stuff doesn't work out all the time. Friendships end, people move, people quit jobs. There's a turmoil in the marketplace, which is called freedom. Yeah. And companies fail, that's a mark of Bitcoin's success. Because, boy, what you don't want in the financial industry is bailouts. Yeah. But we've become so coddled and protected by the government, the FDIC, and the government's protection of the financial industry that now if anything close to a financial services company closes doors, you know, it's just like, end of the world, because we've been shielded it from it. But that's what we need to get back in the financial system, is the capacity to fail.
See, this is what intrigued me about Bitcoin, is the bankers, the media, the government, they all are really against Bitcoin. And I was like, if the guys I don't like Bitcoin, I'm going to like Bitcoin because it's very interesting. But one criticism I get of Bitcoin is people who watch our channel and people who are in the general movement, they say that it's a cashless, trackable, one world government currency. That's what I've been hearing. What answer would you have to that? Because, you know, there's Visa, there's MasterCard. Already all of our money is digital anyway now. But what do you say to that argument that this is the New World's Order plan for a one world government currency that's trackable, that all these elites wanted throughout the years?
Well, I mean, I think the people who criticize it for being a New World Order tool are missing the bigger picture, which is that it's actually run by lizard men. I'm not really supposed to talk about this in public. In fact, I'm going to. No, I mean, it's silly. I mean, digital is good. Digital is environmentally friendly. You know, one of the things that is an advantage is the reduction of labor in the production of goods is basically the definition of a rising standard of living. You know, we could have full employment tomorrow if we eliminated all farm machinery and all the crops had to be planted and picked by hand. You know, we would have 1/10 the population because we produce almost no food, but nobody would be out of a job. The elimination of labor, however difficult it is for the individual laborers, is the very definition of economic progress. The elimination of overhead. Anytime human hands touch anything, the price of it goes up enormously. And so the idea that you can have the transfer of value, Bitcoin is, to call it a coin or a currency is understandable but kind of unfortunate. I mean, it's an ecosystem of information transfer. That's all. I mean, that's what it is. And that's as limitless as the internet. Saying that the internet is about text is missing the big picture of what the internet can do. Yeah. And so I think that people are kind of missing that the elimination of labor and the transfer of barter value is such an enormous and unfathomable step forward. I mean, the elimination of bankers, the elimination of stockbrokers, the elimination of accountants in this kind of area, the elimination of all the lawyers needed to do an IPO and all of that kind of stuff. We can release these people to more productive employment, like asking us if we want fries with our Happy Meal, washing our cars, massaging our feet, cleaning our shoes, you know, any number of things these people can do instead of making massive amounts of money controlling other people's money.
I also find it really interesting how it totally eliminates, you know, the need for central banking. And it totally gets rid of all the transaction fees, and all the big money players and the big banksters aren't really in charge of it. So it's kind of a very interesting dynamic to see it develop, to see it grow. It's still in its baby stages, but it's very exciting. I mean, you've been into Bitcoin for how long, and how has it helped you?
Just one minor correction, eliminating the need for central banking. Yeah. I would argue there's absolutely no need for central banking, unless you're a government who wants to bribe people with the money of the unborn.
Totally agree.
But I guess I was first talking about it on Russian TV, Russian television, about 4 years ago, I think. So, I mean, it was back in the single digits back in the day. I think it's wonderful because what it's showing is that when something is privatized, Because the most important thing to me about Bitcoin is not the open source or anything like that, not the peer-to-peer, not even the anonymity. It's that it is privatized. In other words, it is, and that doesn't mean for profit, that just means outside of coercive regulation and control and the violence of central planning. So what we're seeing is an incredible eruption of creativity, and I talked to most of the vendors yesterday. I used to be a software entrepreneur, so part of me is like, oh, I wish I was still doing that. But, the guys are coming up with open source ATMs that you can buy for $1,000, that you can run off a tablet. I mean, it's mind-blowing. People are coming up with, basically it's a stock exchange on a USB stick, which can be run, you can even run it off a cell phone. So you can sell, for instance, you say, I want to write a book, I need 6 months, and you can create and sell shares to people to share in the profit of what you write. And you can do that very easily and the contracts are embedded. Dispute resolution, third-party verification, just incredible stuff that's going on. What an amazing amount of entrepreneurial energy is being dedicated to one of the most important things of the world, which is money. And when the government has monopoly on money, it shields it from innovation by entrepreneurs and allows sociopaths to prey on the unborn by printing money. So I love the fact that one of the most essential aspects of human life is finally being opened up to entrepreneurial energies.
And I think the internet is a huge part of that. I mean, we're living in really exciting times where, the guys like me and you wouldn't have a voice if it really wasn't for the internet, if it wasn't for the community out there. How long have you been doing this, and what effect have you seen with social media, and kind of where do you see it going?
Well, I started writing my first articles in 2005, and I started reading them, and then I ended up podcasting from my car because I had a long commute. So I just recorded myself in my car talking about the philosophy that I'd read about and studied. I have a master's degree in the history, focusing on the history of philosophy for 20 years, 25 years at the time. And it's been 6 or 7 years since I went sort of full-time doing this. The show is great. We're doing 3 or 4 million downloads a month, and I'm down here. I did Alex Jones. We're going to do Joe Rogan later on the month. So it's a great venue to be able to get philosophy out to the masses, because most people don't really have any exposure to philosophy, and yet it is such an essential part of how to be a decent person. Social media is fantastic. As you say, I would have no voice. I would still be a software guy, still be building companies, still be running things, which was fun and a great thing to do. But I felt the world needed a little bit more philosophy and a little bit less software. And I felt that was a good trade-off for me, and hopefully for the world as well. But it's essential that the absence of gatekeepers is the most astounding revolution, and it's never occurred before.
Yes.
Like, we've got the Gutenberg press where people were able to print books, and Luther translated the Bible into the vernacular, and people could read the Bible for the first time in over 1,000 years. So all of that kind of stuff is great, but they all required gatekeepers. You still had the monarchs often licensing the presses. You still had extreme censorship, and the printing press itself was expensive and technical and messy, and the average person didn't have access to it. Now, for the price of a cup of coffee a day, you get access to all the world's intelligence to which you can contribute with no gatekeepers. It's truly unprecedented, and I think people will look back in the future and say, damn it, I wish I was alive back in that day. What an incredible ride that will never come again.
It's fascinating to me. Just right now, we're living in a day and age where one voice, one person, one human soul could just light a match that could just turn everything upside down. And it's slowly and surely happening. Talking about social media, I asked social media what questions they would wanted to ask you. This is just on Instagram here. We got 34 comments, huge debates. They weren't that mean to you. They're mean to everyone on social media. Some people love you, some people hate you, but just like everybody, everyone has an opinion online. But this was, I guess, one of the first questions that came in from Patel 2110.
2111 doesn't like me.
2110. He's a good guy. They weren't too brutal on you. They're brutal on me. They call me Putin's son. It's insane. Putin's son.
Oh, because of the...
Yeah. I'm Polish. I don't like that guy at all, but for some reason they just said
they didn't like your philosophy or something.
Right.
So you got off easy. But one of the questions that I thought was interesting is, does libertarianism really make sense in a modern world where we are so technologically advanced that we could actually have enough resources to food, house, and clothe every man, woman, and child on the earth? And that's Apatow 2110. He keeps going on. What you get with capitalism is an incentive to keep goods at a certain demand in order to keep making a profit, as an exemplified by the diamond and oil industry, which we know for a fact are lying about exactly how big oil and diamond deposits are in order to keep prices up. So I guess he's asking, does it make sense to be a libertarian with capitalism and all that? What's your take on that?
Well, you can't talk about the oil industry and the diamond industry as if they're part of the free market. These are government-sanctioned cartels. I mean, one clue about the oil industry is it's run by the Saudi government, not really part of the free market. They're an autocratic dictatorship that is brutal on women and children in particular. And so generally, anytime a monarch is involved, it's really nothing to do with the free market. The diamond deposits are regulated and licensed by the state. And look, I mean, philosophy teaches you to value people over things. And if you want to drive down the prices of diamonds, stop being so ridiculously vain about pretty stuff on your finger. You know, like stop measuring yourself by the work of crap produced by the earth accidentally millions of years ago. I mean, look how much I'm worth. You know, flash me, they say, and all that, you know. How about, you know, the diamond glow of your virtuous heart being your measure of value? So one of them can be taken care of by philosophy. The second one, if you want to drive down the price of oil, the first thing the government should stop doing is subsidizing roads. You know, we have an oil-based culture because after the Second World War, in America in particular, the government built all of these roads out of fear of a nuclear strike and needing to move troops from place to place. Yep. Now, of course, once you build all these, quote, free roads, which everyone is still paying for, once you build all these free roads, guess what? You know, you dig a big channel out of a river, you get another river. And so they built all these free roads, and now we have this car-based culture. So stop subsidizing roads. And another thing, if you want to deal with this kind of stuff, too, stop having ridiculously high prices for taxi plates. You know, one of the reasons everyone needs a car in a city is because I was driving some friends around the conference because to get to the airport, from the airport to here, it's about 30 minutes, it was over $60. Yeah. I mean, because so just these kinds of things. Stop having the government intervene in everything and drive up the prices. Let the free market, you always have to bid down in the free market. That's what drives prices down. If you look at computers and software, computer hardware in particular, that's where the free market is operating the most fluidly and the most fluently at the moment, and that's where the prices of things are going down continuously. If you want to get computers into the hands of the poor, the important thing is to let people compete as much as humanly possible to drive the price down. That's how you get computers and cell phones, and that's why almost all poor people now have color televisions and air conditioning and dishwashers and computers and internet access. I mean, because that's where the free market has taken them. Wherever you see the prices staying high or going high, just look for the heavy hand of the state. Get rid of that and it'll bring it down.
Very well said. Personally, I don't know what the answer is, but I know what the problem is, and it's government. So I thank you so much, Molyneux. You're awesome, and I appreciate your philosophy a lot.
And, you know, he brought up an important point. You know, when someone brings up, well, you know, capitalism means that, you know, stuff like blood diamonds and all that can exist. Well, no, that's not capitalism. That's, you know, dictatorship. Everything's, basically being authorized by government and allowing force to be used upon others. That's not a free market at all. You are not free to engage or not engage in, mining for diamonds when you're in that situation. Again, it's basically, when you say things like that, what you're basically doing is putting a different type of philosophy under the name of a free market or capitalism. That's not a free market at all. Free market's where you have the choice to engage in something or not. Look at the Amish. They choose to not engage in certain things and engage in others. That they choose a more free market, approach. They do it for their own religious beliefs and community, but they choose not to engage. Well, the whole blood diamond issue and slaves being used to mine diamonds, that's not too much choice in that matter. And it's one of those things I see a lot of those type of arguments where they try to bring up something that is that's a symptom from corporatism and go, look at that. That's what capitalism does. Well, no, a true capitalist market, a free market, you would definitely have more choices. What we have right now is, it's not the monopoly that you're taught in school. This isn't one company sells all the t-shirts and another company sells all the pants in America and another company sells all the electricity in America. What we have is a regulated monopoly where they just section it off. Well, you get this portion of the country, you get this portion of the country, or this portion of that state, or that county, like cable companies. You might have in the city limits one cable company, and then outside the city limits you'll have another cable company. But you can't choose to go, well, I don't want company B, I want company A. Well, no, company A isn't in your area. Well, why is that? Well, we have, it's a regulated monopoly, basically. And I've actually had one tell me that. When I was trying to get service when I moved and, called the one company and they're like, well, we don't have it out there. This was way back. And I said, so basically they have a monopoly there and you have a monopoly there. They go, well, it's a regulated monopoly. So right there, they told me it's still a monopoly. It's a regulated monopoly though. Like that makes it better. So you only get the monopoly within this area. That's great. And I remember, when satellites, started really becoming a popular thing, when they actually got them down to the little small dish that you could put on the little peak of your house, instead of having some giant dish out in your backyard. I watched those regulated monopolies freak out, and they were really trying to slander, I wouldn't say slander, but exaggerate the problems with satellite. And one of the things they would go, well, if you even get the slightest wind, your reception goes out. And I'm not going to say what cable company or what area this cable company was in, but this cable company had a extremely long history of their cable just cutting out constantly. And they exaggerated, with just the slightest gust of wind, your satellite might go out. You don't have that problem with cable. No, it just cuts out for no reason. For, half a day. It's one of those things, it's amazing that, how scared that little regulated monopoly got when the satellites really started becoming popular. And they didn't know how to handle it. They had a monopoly. They had that city. They didn't have a competitor. but it was a regulated monopoly. And they, you get the same thing with electric companies, water service. A lot of places, they don't allow you to put a well in no more, so you have to hook up to the city water. It's amazing. And, I choose not to live in areas like that. They start pushing it everywhere though, because I live on the lakes, and even though these houses have been here for 60 years, we're going to come through and make it mandatory you all go on sewers. And that'll clean up the water. It had nothing to do with how the road runoff ran right into the lake, basically. All the garbage from the road ran into the lake every time it ran. It had nothing to do with that. It was just basically forcing people onto something that they wouldn't have agreed to if it was voluntary. Why would I pay you for a service that I'm providing myself right now? Occasionally I have to do my own maintenance that, the city's supposed to do to their water infrastructure, their sewer infrastructure. Well, same thing applies when you have a septic or a well. You have to maintenance that stuff. It doesn't last forever. You have to, constantly maintenance things and do your upkeep on it. Well, if you don't fix your septic, if it goes bad and starts flooding your yard smells. Therefore, you're more than likely going to fix that. If your well pump goes out and you don't have water now, more than likely you're going to do what it takes to make sure that gets fixed pretty quick. Even if you're low on funds, you'll try to, you might get by for a couple of days and then get the water finally fixed and back going. Well, the city doesn't do proper maintenance at all. It always seems like that. Any city you go to, you're always hearing about, 80-year-old pipes blowing. Well, yeah, they probably haven't been maintained at all. They probably needed replaced, 20 years ago. And they even admit, well, these were only made to last 30 years. Isn't it great that they've lasted 80? No, that means they needed to replace a long time ago. You didn't upkeep. It's great that they haven't collapsed on everybody, but, you should really look into fixing that. And it's amazing. There's some that don't need replaced. There's some old, sewer systems in places that the way it was built, it can last, but there's a lot that they need repaired. They have problems. They do burst in areas, and they replace that little section where it bursted. And talk about how great the rest of it's holding up, even though it should have been replaced 30 years ago or so. It's amazing. You're forced into things. We need to look for that free market. And that's when you have actual liberty. When you're truly liberated, you have the choice to go, no, I'm not going to buy on a service that constantly is failing. I'll take my luck with providing my own water service and septic service. It's amazing. And you even see it sometimes, being from a community that has quite a bit of Amish, you look at it and, people being, well, you have an outhouse, so we passed an ordinance that says, that's not proper way of disposal, so. And, it's like, these people have been doing it for, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. But now it's all of a sudden bad. And they've won. And I think more groups need to get together. And, definitely libertarians, when they create communities, they can really actually make that change. And I know Free State Project up there in New Hampshire is trying to accomplish that. And I know they've had a lot of success, but they've also had some, roadblocks put in their way in a lot of cases. But, that's the type of stuff I support. I got a few articles. Let me reload some of this here. And, this is from Ben Swan, and I talked about this at the beginning that I was going to cover this, and this can really be a problem, and that's Michigan triggering constitutional convention. Says here, Michigan's recently passed resolution calling for a constitutional convention of the states to amend the federal constitution may have been the catalyst to finally put the process in motion. At the magic number 34, Michigan joins multiple other states that have successfully passed a resolution calling for a federal balanced budget amendment. Tennessee passed one a couple weeks before Michigan. I'm not going to read all of this. It's a pretty long article. Not real long, but a little bit long. But the article also, everybody's like, oh, well, yeah, now you get a balanced budget amendment put in. That would be awesome. You have a lot of people calling for this. Says here, though, however, New York Times best-selling author and constitutional scholar, Dr. Kevin Gutzman says that's not so when it comes to, multiple states rescinded their, applications. The Constitution makes no provision for a state to rescind its application for an amendment, convention. Therefore, the number 34 has been reached. And then you read farther on down, according to Guzman, Congress cannot ignore this latest development. Congress has no option. It must call a convention. Representative Hunter or one of its colleagues should now propose a resolution saying when and where the convention will meet. Although it may seem these states will only be allowing to propose a BBA at the convention due to their state resolutions or applications, saying this is the reason they are requesting Congress call the convention. That simply is not true. Guzman warns that although the idea of a runaway convention is absurd, the current convention would allow states to propose any sort of amendment they want. For example, Hawaii passed its resolution and wants to make Obamacare part of the federal constitution. According to Guzman, Hawaii would be allowed to propose such an amendment at this convention if it is not constrained. According to Guzman, there is a way to ensure states only propose a BBA and nothing more in this open convention. When state legislators pass their resolutions, they can bring their delegates to vote only on the proposed amendment at the convention. Guzman says that founding father George Nicholas expounded upon the notion that individual state legislators would be able to control the convention process. It's one of those things that could really really, completely do what Obama wants to do, which is completely transform America. Transform it from anything you've ever known before. Something that you won't recognize at all. That can really be the final nail in the coffin when it comes to getting rid of any resemblance to the Constitution we know. I have another one here out of Ben Swan. UN critical of drone strikes. Why not American taxpayers? So I'm going to go ahead and cue this up here. And it says here, a new special report from the UN Human Rights Council is demanding answers from the United States and other responsible governments about the use of drones to go after terrorists. So why aren't the American people demanding the same answers? And I think there are a lot of us in the community, not to say we all agree on everything, but I think a lot of us agree that drone strikes are definitely not a good idea. And we really have called for answers, but we haven't got any. I think that's the major problem. And they just don't listen to us. But let me go ahead and play this.
A new UN report is condemning the use of drone strikes around the world and demanding accountability. I'm Ben Swan with your Truth in Media moment. Thanks so much for watching. A recently released report by a special reporter on human rights calls upon the United States and other so-called responsible governments to publicly investigate civilian deaths at the hands of unmanned aerial vehicles, also known as drones. The latest report by Ben Emerson examined 30 individual cases in which civilian harm, that's defined as death, injury, or instances where civilians were put at immediate risk, took place. The cases stem from reports in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Yemen, Somalia, and Gaza. Emerson's report focuses on legal issues surrounding the United States and allies and their decision to bomb sovereign nations in pursuit of terrorists. Specifically, the special reporter questions the legality of a state encroaching on territory of another country with the intent to kill a person. So what can be done? Well, Emerson calls upon the states involved in at least 30 strikes to publicly investigate and explain them. He also recommends the states whose territories were under attack to provide as much information as possible. Emerson's final recommendation is for the Human Rights Council to establish a panel of experts to examine the legal issues raised by drones and targeted killings. The report states that governments initiating the attacks are now legally obligated to explain the deaths. And that may be the biggest issue of all here. The fact that not only are sovereign nations being bombed into an oblivion, but the United States feels no reason to explain what they're doing. What's most disappointing here is that in this case, it's the United Nations asking for explanation instead of the American people, those of us being forced to pay for a policy that's nothing less than barbaric. For stories that affect your liberty, you can find me online at benswan.com, where humanity is greater than politics.
Now, I really think that a lot of the American people have. There's a lot of people that have stood up and spoke out about this. That, you know, how are we defending the American people by approaching other territories around the world and drone striking? Or even, you know, we're always like involved in some type of coup going on or trying to incite a coup. And now there's revelations out about, the U.S. involvement in a Cuban Twitter. It's amazing what's really going on here. we've spoke out about stuff like this, and the problem is there's a large populace that is basically going, I'm not biting the hand that feeds me because I get everything from government. And who do you think is paying for that? The rest of us. There was a surfer that was interviewed that felt, well, I want to pursue my passion, therefore it's okay that I don't work and get government aid because I'm still pursuing my passion and I might make it big. That's why your money should be taken out of your check to pay for someone else to feed themselves. I'm not saying everybody that gets some type of aid doesn't need it or doesn't deserve it. There's people out there that they really just got in a tight spot because of the situation we're put in. We're not able just to go, well, since I lost my job, let me go out here and just make something and sell it. You have to go through so much crap because, as you know, you can go on YouTube, just search vendor gets arrested for selling without permit. You have to have a permit to sell your stuff. Well, I'll sell at my house. Oh, well, you're not licensed to sell out. You're not permitted to sell out of your house. It's not licensed or it's not zoned as commercial. Therefore, you can't sell out of your house. The internet has helped a lot of people, but not everybody that's been put in a bad situation has been able to afford the internet. They've been worried more about making sure that their heat's on. It's not easy for everyone. So, you know, there's people that do need help. But I believe in private help more than I do government help. Government help just seems to be given out so easy and taken away from others so easily. You know, you have your money taken from you to pay for someone, and you find out that, well, the surfer guy's getting, you know, government aid for not working and just playing in his rock band. Well, I might make it one day, you know. We're gonna go on tour. We're finishing our album. Well, that's great, but you could have worked a restaurant job, or you know, I have a buddy that's passionate about music, and he's actually trying to do it professional, but he works. That's the major thing, and you know, he hasn't always been able to find a perfect job for what he does, and he still, you know, worked through it until he could find a better job that would allow him to pursue what he wanted to, but he worked. He didn't go, well, I need a whole bunch of government aid. That way I can focus on my rock band. And he's been around the country, so, it's possible. Okay. I have one here that I definitely want to cover if I can get it to reload after all my flash crashed. This one's out of the Blaze. And officer tells Texas man openly carrying rifle he's free to go. It's just hard to believe what happened just 2 minutes later. A San Antonio, San Antonio man was reportedly arrested while openly carrying his rifle while on a walk near his home on Monday. The incident, which was video recorded by the gun owner, started out as a calm and reasonable conversation, but ended dramatically with cops tasing the man before they put him in handcuffs. While it is perfectly legal to openly carry a rifle in Texas, police reportedly arrested Henry Vinnick, 19, under a local ordinance that apparently prohibits residents from carrying a loaded rifle or shotgun within city limits, which that in itself is actually been overruled, and I'll get into that further on in this article. I believe it brings it up too. In a video posted on YouTube Monday, I can't even pronounce his last name. Vidic, I'll just say Vidic, is seen being approached by officers, immediately ordered to put his rifle on the ground. And it says here, quote, "I'm not doing anything wrong, sir," Vinnick replies to the command. One of the officers then claimed they received complaints that he was pointing his rifle at people. Vinnick denied pointing his gun at anyone and informed officers that his rifle was loaded. After several minutes of chatting between Vinnick and a reasonable-sounding officer, it seemed as the situation would be diffused and the gun owner would be sent on his way. Quote, "You are not under arrest. You are free to go," the cop says in the video. "You're just going to happen to walk home, and I'm just going to happen to make sure you get home safely. And as soon as you get home safely, you will never see us again." Then the situation took an unexpected turn. Short time later, another officer inserted himself into the situation and took a more aggressive approach. A few minutes before the more assertive officer arrived, another officer can be heard confirming that the Sarge was on his way. "We're going to take the gun off your shoulder. Do you understand that?" the officer is heard saying. "Do you understand that?" The other officer then asked Vinnick if he is going to fight if they grab his gun, to which he replies, "I'm not going to grab it, sir. I have not been arrested, and the law says unless I've been arrested, you can't take it from me." Though he had already confirmed several times that his rifle was loaded, the officer asked him again, "Is it chambered?" Vinnick replies, claiming again that he is not breaking any laws. Then suddenly an officer pulls out his taser, uses it on Vinnick, who mumbles that he is being unlawfully arrested and that he doesn't consent to any searches or seizures. In a Tuesday press release provided to the Blaze, Open Carry Texas argued the ordinance, and this is the part that needs to kind of be out there a little bit more. People need to understand. They argued the ordinance under which Vinnick was arrested directly violates state preemption laws pertaining to firearms as contained in Local Government Code 229.001A1, which states a municipality may not adopt regulations relating to the transfer, private ownership, keeping, transportation, licensing, or registration of firearms, air guns, ammunition, or firearm. Which, it says here, San Antonio Ordinance Section 21-16 states, "It shall be unlawful for any person other than duly authorized peace officers to carry a loaded rifle or shotgun on any public street within the city or in a motor vehicle while the same is being operated on a public street within the city." Well, if you read the state preemption law, which again, a municipality may not adopt regulations relating to the transfer, private ownership, keeping, transportation, licensing, or registration of firearms, air guns, ammunition, or firearm. The pro-gun group also accused the San Antonio Police Department of lacking the proper training, experience, and common sense on guns and Texas law. Messages left with the San Antonio Police Department seeking clarification on the local ordinance and whether it is overruled by state law were not immediately returned. Open Carry Texas said it planned to hold a rally in support of Vinnick on April 6 at 1 p.m. outside the San Antonio Police Department. So you see right there that they've passed state laws prohibiting local governments from abridging Second Amendment rights, and they did that for a reason. Why did they do that? To nullify federal laws. That way, the feds couldn't come into a local municipality and use them as their foot soldiers to enforce gun registration or gun confiscation or limiting the transportation or abridging the ability for someone to transport. So that's why that law was there, and even without it, you see it happening. And those are the type of people that they have in office there. So I guess, that's what you're going to get. Okay. I have one here. This one's out of the freethoughtproject.com. And I'm sure a lot of people have seen it. It's been around the internet. The cop who tasered handcuffed woman in Hart. It says here, do you remember the cop that tasered a handcuffed woman in the chest while his buddies just stood there and watched? Her name is Nakina Williams. His name is Officer Sterling Taylor of the McAllister Police Department, and after this vulgar display of power, he was allowed to remain on the force. Says here, karma refers to the principle of causality where intent and actions of an individual influence the future of that individual. Could the following be incident, be an example of karma? We like to think so. According to a court affidavit, which they have a link here to, filed in the case, McAllister police were dispatched Saturday night to a fight at 725 South D Street. The affidavit states that Officer Sterling Taylor was the first to arrive and was advised by Dustin Williams that the fight was over and everything was okay. The affidavit alleges Taylor attempted to talk to the father and sons at the scene, and all three told him that the fight had ended and told Taylor to leave. The affidavit alleges Taylor warned the Williamses they could be arrested after they allegedly threatened bodily harm to men who had been involved in the fight. Then it alleges that when Taylor was attacked by all three men and was choked. Once Taylor was able to use his portable police radio and call for help, the men quit fighting and went inside their home. The affidavit alleges Taylor followed them into the home to arrest them. The affidavit states The three men then attacked Taylor inside the home until other officers arrived, the affidavit alleges. The affidavit states Taylor was transported to McAllister Regional Health Center, where he was treated and released. Hayden and Dustin were also taken to MRHC, treated and released to police custody, according to McAllister Police Department Sergeant Chris Morris. Ironically enough, Taylor's attacker shared the same last name as the woman he tased. It doesn't say if they were actually related, though. But it's interesting, but I've told people that eventually people are going to stand up to police brutality with their own brutality, and that it's a sad day when you see that in the future, that it's gotten this far. It really has. It's gotten this far that this is what we're going to see. There's always a chance for change, and that's up to all the individuals involved. The police, everybody else, everyone. Really just step back from what you believe to be reality for a second. How can you make your life better? By making everyone around you, by being a good person in your community. Well, if you're a police officer and you're abusing your authority, are you a good person in your community? Gonna say no. And that's where, things go wrong. You have to weed out the corruption. And until you do that, I'm kind of fearful for what the future holds. I want to kind of go back to the Fort Hood shooting, because I was on benswan.com just, looking at all the articles, and one that I told you I would cover is an update about the Fort Hood shooting. Says here, cocktail, prescription drugs, and gun-free zones. And we all know that gun-free zones make a pretty easy target for someone that doesn't care. A day after 34-year-old Army Specialist Ivan Lopez opened fire at Fort Hood, killing 3 and injuring 16 others before turning gun on himself. We are learning more about Lopez and the once again already combination of antidepressants and gun-free zones. Lopez was married, father who had just moved to Texas with his wife and young daughter 3 weeks before the shooting. Previously, he served in the Army National Guard in Puerto Rico and did one 4-month tour of duty in Iraq in 2011. Updated, it appears that Lopez is not the man in the Kylene Daily Herald photo from 2010, also identified as Ivan Lopez, part of the 1st Battalion Warrior Transition Brigade, though Lieutenant General Mark Miley did say that Lopez was being treated for mental health issues. We do know that the soldier had behavioral health and mental health issues and was being treated for that. And I have a clip here I'm going to play real quick. And this one is the truth behind the Fort Hood shooting, and this one's from Stefan. So go ahead and cue this up here.
Hi everybody, Stefan Molyneux from Free Domain Radio. Hope you're doing well. So this is the multi-generational tragic backstory behind Ivan Lopez's recent shooting and killing of 3 people and wounding of 16 more at the military base at Fort Hood in Texas, which of course was the location of the 2009 shooting situation where an officer killed 13 people. To put this in context, the U.S. military is experiencing, after more than a decade of war,
22 suicides every single day. 22 suicides every single day, far larger than the amount of deaths occurring from combat. And there's a series of reasons for all of this, which go back more than 100 years, which we'll talk about. So the Iraq War veteran Lopez was being evaluated for post-traumatic stress disorder before he opened fire in his murderous rampage. He had been fully evaluated by a psychiatrist a month ago, and he did serve for 4 months as a truck driver in Iraq in 2013, but his records show no physical wounds, no direct involvement in combat or any injury that might lead the Army to further investigate what's called TBI, or traumatic brain injury, which is a big problem these days. He did enlist in the Army in April 2010 as an infantry soldier, later became a truck driver. Lopez did self-report a traumatic brain injury while he was deployed, according to the military. He had formerly been a policeman. He was undergoing a variety of treatments for conditions, including depression, anxiety, and sleep disturbances. He was prescribed drugs that include Ambien, a sleep aid, and we don't know at the moment if he was on SSRIs. SSRIs are one of the leading drugs in a recent list compiled of the top 10 drugs that cause violent behavior. And if you look up SSRIs and shootings, you will see that the one thing that many shootings in America have in common, overwhelmingly in common, all the way back to Columbine, is the degree to which the shooters were either on SSRI drugs, these mind-altering substances, or had recently quit them and were going through withdrawal. So, as you probably know, the military in the United States is really stretched to the breaking point. The result of more than a decade of war and perpetual tours of duty in relentlessly stressful environments is that the U.S. military is currently experiencing 22 suicides every single day. That is far more than soldiers killed by enemy combatants. In other words, the greatest enemy of the U.S. soldier, could be argued, is the civilian leadership that repeatedly deploys them in these rather useless wars. Why is it so difficult these days to be a soldier? Well, of course it always has been, but it's extrapolated and exacerbated by increases in technology. So, during World War II, the average combatant saw approximately 40 days of actual combat over a 4-year period. So about 10 combat days every year. When you weren't in combat, you weren't really at risk when you were behind the lines or when you were traveling. The big change which started in Vietnam was the introduction of the helicopter. Once you had the helicopter, then you had the chance to move troops around very quickly, and that changed things quite a bit. So 40 days of actual combat in 4 years for the average U.S. soldier in the Second World War. And in the Second World War, if you were a soldier and you were injured, 1 in 3 would die. That's now down to 10 to 12% because of course, increased battlefield medicine, faster response times, and so on. In Korea, the average combat days was 180 days, which is difficult to verify, to be sure. A combat day is defined as when you go out and you don't know if you're going to come back alive or dead. And in Vietnam, approximately 240 days of combat per tour, which was a little more than a year. Most soldiers in Vietnam did 1 tour, some did 2, and very rarely 3. Now, the default is multiple tours in Iraq and Afghanistan and elsewhere. The troops serving in Iraq and Afghanistan are now experiencing over 310 days of combat per year. 310 days of combat per year. So that is pretty tragic. The closest parallel war was the First World War, when, of course, in France in particular, the English and the Germans, the French and the Germans, and later, after 1917, the Americans and the Germans and other Axis powers were locked in this trench warfare, which just went on and on. The Second World War was much more mobile, and of course troop movement was very slow, which is one of the reasons why, in the Second World War, there was much less combat per troop. At the end of the First World War in the United States, almost 40% of all hospitalized veterans suffered combat-related mental and nervous disorders. What in the First World War was called shell shock was rather rare, or at least not that much reported in previous wars, which had not been total wars with all of the wealth and power and godforsaken efficiency of a post-industrial economy. So they thought it was shell shock because men were scared and unable to go back into combat and experiencing significant signs of mental distress, even though they didn't have any physical injuries. And they called it shell shock because they thought maybe something had gone wrong with the inner ears or something had gone wrong with the nervous system as the result of being close to this level of combat. They thought it was noise related. This actually sparked a considerable interest in Freudian theories because nobody could really figure out. And the goal was, of course, to get them back into combat as quickly as possible. During the Korean War, the official attitude was that mental breakdowns were to be dealt with quickly. The best thing for the combatant was to be returned to the front lines. And only 6% of evacuations were for psychiatric reasons in Korea compared to World War II, where 23% of the evacuations were for psychiatric casualties. And a congressional report published in 1990 stated that 480,000, or 15% of the total 3.15 million Americans who served in Vietnam, were 15 years after the war still suffering from combat-related psychological problems. The report also concluded that over 960,000 men and 1,900 women who had served in Vietnam had suffered PTSD symptoms at some time in their lives. Also, the degree of not just exposure to combat, but engagement in combat has changed considerably since the Second World War. So in his book, On Killing, Lieutenant Colonel David Grossman states that the percentage of combat soldiers actually willing to shoot at and kill the enemy has traditionally been very low. So 15 to 20% of soldiers in combat are willing to actually point their gun at and shoot to kill the enemy, which is one of the reasons why the military has abandoned the conscription model. It's not out of a newfound respect for individual rights. It's because you really don't get a lot of people actually shooting to kill at an enemy during a war if you have a conscription army. Now, in order to improve this happened to some degree in Korea, but significantly more in Vietnam. To improve this problem of soldiers not shooting to kill, armed services developed specialized training designed to increase this percentage through conditioning and has got it closer to 95%. So 95% of soldiers now are willing to shoot at and kill an enemy. The psychological cost on the soldiers has been considerable. The more you develop the kind of cold-blooded murder instinct in soldiers, the less they are able to adjust back to civilian life. So you basically sharpen them until they snap after the war. This is one of the reasons why. So continual exposure to combat plus increased training to create murderers has significantly impacted the mental health, particularly of American soldiers. So why didn't people shoot their guns in the battlefield in the past? Well, religious scruples against killing, thou shalt not kill, kind of takes root in people's brains. But an even bigger factor in the Second World War was shock. In one study of a division that saw heavy fighting in World War II, a quarter of the soldiers admitted that they had been so scared that they vomited. Almost a quarter lost control of their bowels. 10% urinated in their pants. And this was the percentage of killing, percentage of killers in the Second World War was higher in Japan, in the Japanese, so it's the Pacific War, than in the European War, because it was easier to alienate one's emotions from the Japanese, who looked different from Europeans. In an essay, there is a photo which appeared as a human interest in Look magazine. It shows a pretty young American woman showing off the love letter sent to her by her Marine boyfriend. He had written it on the skull of a Japanese soldier. So these and other reasons are the primary causes behind massive amounts of military suicides and these shootings that occur because, of course, significant portions of these broken killbots are on psychotropic medications, SSRIs, and other mind-altering medications. which are heavily contribute towards violent thoughts, suicidal ideation, and so on. So clearly, this military machine is being bent to the breaking point. Of course, these wars need to end as quickly as humanly possible. And ladies, if you feel like you can't do much about it, you can. We men, as you may or may not be aware, we men will do pretty much whatever women say. In the First World War, there were women who handed out white feathers of cowardice, quote, cowardice, to men of military age they found walking around the streets of England, particularly in London. And out of fear of these white feathers, perhaps they expected some sort of near fatal tickling, men would sign up and go to war. Men will do just about anything to gain sexual access to women. So women, if you want to do something to really end war as we know it, the first thing to do is stop having sex with soldiers. If a man is a soldier, then don't sleep with him. Because if you screw soldiers, you really are screwing the future.
Little anti-war there for you. And you know, we see this problem where now we have soldiers that, you know, engage in combat for a lot more days. Their training now is to the point that they're really trying to make them more of killers, not, you know, be shocked. Just shoot. And then we bring them back and put them on SSRIs and all kinds of other, pharmaceuticals. And so now it makes them killers that are mentally unstable more than they were from war and the manipulation and brainwashing you did to them. So it's like 3 times as bad as it should have been. Great. Seems like all these type of problems that we're having with people on pharmaceuticals and shooting everything. Why is anybody even discussing the gun issue? Where is the big, huge debate on these SSRIs, these pharmaceutical companies, and what they're doing to people and getting away with? What they're doing to the youth, definitely. Because by allowing this to remain on the market, allowing it to be forced onto a lot of people, which you see a lot of young people forced onto stuff like this. They're too young. They're just trying to do what they think's good because this is what everybody's telling them is good. And they get forced on these drugs, and then, you know, it comes out that all these shootings are related to this drug. Well, what are they really starting to do then? What they're doing is they're setting up where your kids won't ever be able to own a firearm. Just think about it. Your kids will be stuck on these SSRIs because, well, you know, your kid cried, so they have a depression issue. So we're gonna, or they were picked on and they cried in the bathroom, so they're depressed. We need to put them on these drugs and, you know, antidepressants, SSRIs, all the. Well, yeah, well, this could create violence. So as long as they need to be on these drugs the rest of their life, but, you know, they won't be able to own a gun. Now they're going, well, you know, it could be a long-lasting effect, which that really hasn't been shown. They try to claim that because some people that have stopped taking their SSRIs have committed things. Well, yeah, that's because they're on withdrawals. It's not out of their system. You can't blame it on them not being on the SSRI. it's not out of their system. It's the withdrawals of it coming out of their system, slowly coming down off that medication, which different people's bodies react to it differently too. So it's a real complicated thing, and it's just bad all around, it seems. Success rates with a lot of these drugs are very, very, I think, misquoted, put it that way. I think they're exaggerated on the success rates of them, and even at that, I don't think they compare to the unsuccessful rates. And again, I think those are underestimated. It's just amazing that we even talk about guns, that guns are even brought up in the conversation when you just blindly take medication because you were told it's good for you. Well, you know what? Jump off this bridge. It's good for you. Well, you wouldn't do that, but you might on that medication. It's one of those things. It's like people just, even with the evidence right there in front of them, they're blind to it. But then so easily bought into, well, guns are bad. And it's just amazing. Okay, we have about 10 minutes. Allow me to cover another article here. Okay, this one was one that I definitely wanted to cover. This one's out of Ben Swan. Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz to defend Justin Pelletier. 15-year-old Justina Pelletier has been in the center of a custody between her parents and Boston Children's Hospital for over a year. February 2013, the hospital took custody of Justina against her parents' will. Then just last month, to dismay of the girl's parents, Massachusetts juvenile court, Judge Joseph Johnston ruled that Justina will remain in the permanent custody of Massachusetts Department of Children and Families. In response to the ruling, a high-profile lawyer from Harvard Law School, Alan Dershowitz, offered to help the Pelletier parents regain custody of Justina. Dershowitz, an outspoken liberal, told Fox News, "When you hear about a case like this, you scratch your head and you say something else must be going on. I've reached out to one of the family's representatives and we are trying to set up a discussion on how to proceed." He said he will help the family free of charge on the case with regards to broader constitutional issues. Years ago, doctors diagnosed Justina with mitochondrial disease, which causes loss of muscle control. Despite the diagnosis, Justina was able to live a happy and relatively normal life with her family in Connecticut. Then in February 2013, doctors at Boston Children's Hospital insisted the girl has somatoform disorder, not mitochondrial disease. Somatoform disorder is a mental disorder, not a physical one like mitochondrial. And basically they took her off all the medications and didn't let her see her Tufts Medical Center doctors. It says here, Lou said the longer Justina stays in custody of Boston Children's Hospital, the worse her condition gets. A year ago, Justina was competing in figure skating competitions. Now she is paralyzed from the waist down and is not receiving any schooling. She's awful. She's paralyzed and she has bruises on her body. It's just one thing after another, Lou said. Dershowitz said, parents have the right to be wrong as long as they're acting responsibly, and if two distinguished medical centers have different diagnoses, it should be the parents, not the state, to determine the course of treatment. He added that the gag order the judge placed on Liu before the ruling was, without a doubt, unconstitutional. The Harvard law lawyer has won several large-scale court cases in the past. The People's Republic of Massachusetts is so corrupt, and we need to get someone of that genre, Lou Pelletier said. As of right now, it is up to the DCF to decide when and if Justina gets to go home. But there is little doubt that Justina's family will fight the most recent ruling. We'll keep you updated on the situation as it unfolds at benswan.com. This is something that every time I even read something on it, it's heartbreaking that this is happening. I wish someone that is in that area, I wish I could be in that area. I wish I could take the time off and go out there and, do a march, do a, protest, alongside, the Alan Dershowitz and, the other lawyers that are working on this case. And, this is just, it should not be happening. And for it to still be happening after everything has come out, all these accusations and all the BS, it's just anyone with absolutely any common sense can go, this is what she was like with her family under Tufts Medical Center. This is what she's like under Boston Children's Hospital and DCF. This is not good for her. She is paralyzed, losing her hair, can't do anything. There's no complication. There's no, let's get farther in depth in this discussion. No. When there's evidence that her health is going the wrong way under the care of these people, when it was going the complete opposite way when her parents were doing the decision making, when they were seeking the help. There are evidently parents that go, well, let's see, when I tried your method, it went south, and I decided that, well, you're not who I want to be dealing in this. I'm going to seek someone that actually makes her condition better. Kind of like a free market. You don't go buy the part that's junk. And then when you go, well, I'm going to go to this other place and buy a part that's better, or a tool that is better quality, and then all of a sudden the state can just step in and go, no, you have to buy the cheap thing. The expensive one, the durable one, no, can't do it. But I keep breaking. I can't get this bolt off because it's too cheap. It breaks. This tool, let's say a socket or a wrench, keeps breaking because it's cheap. I can't get the bolt off. Well, too bad. I'll never be able to finish my job, and I'll never get paid, and I can't pay my bills and eat. Too bad. Gotta buy a cheap thing. That's basically what it is. It's really that simple. It really is that simple, except it's not a tool breaking and your livelihood being in jeopardy that way. This is a human being that her life is deteriorating right now. Something has to be done. Hashtag free Justina. And the Blaze has been covering this pretty closely. Again, Ben Swan, where I got this article, has been covering it really closely. And on this broadcast, I'll bring you all the updates that I get, and I find on this case, because I really have been following this close. It's unbelievable to me. I don't recognize my country anymore when this is just allowed to happen. But I understand that this is nothing new. It's been slowly being put on us. And parents, you're losing your rights. It's time to fight back. Thank you for tuning in. Have a great weekend. Stay tuned here on UCY.TV to Boiler Room Radio with Jim Funke. Take care.